Hi everyone, my name is Shauna, in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. Before I get farther in this video, the reason why my blush looks like that currently is because I was testing out something for a cosplay. I am too lazy to take this off into normal blush, so we're going with this blush for the video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the Marvel book tag, which was created by Marilee Kristen, and their YouTube channel will be linked down in the description below. Essentially, there's 7 questions. 6 of them are based on the OG Avengers, and the bonus one is based on the first villain in the first Avengers movie. So without further ado, let's get into this. The first one is Iron Man / Tony Stark, a book that made you laugh out loud. So I don't laugh out loud from books because they're funny. I laugh out loud from books because they're terribly written and cringy. So say what you will about me for me finding amusement out of books that are really poorly written. The book that I'll be choosing for this prompt that made me laugh is The Polar Bear's Fake Mate by Sophie Stern. This is the first book in a series about shifters. In this specific book, there's a man who is the face of a multi-billion-dollar company, and some people are photoshopping images to make it look like he's a playboy and that he's scandalous and sleeping around, and it's looking bad for his public image. And he is also a polar bear shifter, and so his mom comes up with this plan, and he agrees to the plan for him to find himself a fake mate. And he finds this woman, and this woman spontaneously decides to take him up on this offer. This book wasn't supposed to be funny, but I found it really funny. The funniest part of this book to me is the fact that one of the biggest conflicts, if not the main conflict in the story, is the fact that the main character, Justin, well, the main male character, because there's 2 points of view, the main male character, Justin, is allergic to cherries, and it is this huge plotline, and the author makes this big, ridiculous deal out of this cherry allergy, and cherries is like somewhat of an obscure allergy. It's not like wheat or peanuts or something, it's like cherries. It's not a common allergen, and I found that to be really funny. And like, it's brought up in terms of the relationship too. Like, he finds out that the girl that he's pursuing as a fake mate has an allergy as well, and he's like, oh my gosh, we're meant to be. And it's so ridiculous that I can't help but laugh. And so this book ended up being a 3-star book for me, meaning I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it because it was so bad and cringeworthy that it was funny. The second prompt is Captain America / Steve Rogers, a book that sends a positive message. When I think of books that send a positive message, the first thing that always pops into mind for me are self-help books, and I know self-help books aren't for everyone, but there's a self-help book that is written by a YouTuber that I feel like sends a very positive message to people who are struggling with their mental health, specifically depression. And this book is You Will Get Through This Night by Daniel Howell, aka Dan Howell / Dan Is Not on Fire. He just goes by Daniel Howell now, but yeah, most people know him as Dan Is Not on Fire, as that was his name for the longest time on YouTube. One of the things that I really like about this book is that I feel like this book provides a lot of resources, especially to people who latched onto YouTube as a method to cope with their mental health. I know I'm not the only person who latched onto different YouTubers and like spent so much time watching YouTube to escape reality and to escape their mental health problems. So I feel like in that sense, having a book by this man who has helped so many people with their anxiety and depression is such a great thing. Furthermore, I really like how Dan wrote this book in conjunction with a psychologist. So I think that this book sends a very positive and hopeful message about how you can get better and about all these different methods and skills that there are out there to help you improve your life and improve your mental health. Question number 3 is Black Widow / Natasha Romanov, a book with a kick-butt female protagonist. I'm going to go with a book that I've read recently, which is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I read this as part of a book club on Fable. If you want to join that book club, it will be linked down in the description below. So Selena from Throne of Glass is a kick-butt female protagonist. She is incredibly, incredibly powerful, and she's incredibly smart, especially strategically. When her life is at risk, she's still able to be super smart and powerful and power through these really rough situations that she's put in. Throne of Glass, in case you don't know, is about this girl who is 18 and she was an assassin. However, she was captured and put into this mine, and she's working as a slave in this mine. So one day the prince comes to the mine and he takes Selena out of the mine and he says, I have a deal for you. If you compete in this tournament and win this tournament and become the king's champion, which would essentially make Selena like the king's personal assassin, then after a few years of service, she will gain her freedom back. Selena agrees to this offer, and there is a love triangle that comes into play in the story. There's fae that come into play and magic, and it's this like deadly tournament, which I always love reading about in books, and I love how awesome the female main character is. I'm not like the biggest fan of her personality, but I can admire how strong she is, and I love her like banter with the other characters in the story. Also, Nehemia isn't the main protagonist. She is a side character, but she is equally kick butt and extremely awesome, but in different ways. She's different ways that she's going about to protect her kingdom because she's a princess, and I love Nehemia so much. I love her more than Selena, but I'm choosing Selena for this one because it has to be the protagonist for this question. Question number 4, Hawkeye / Clint Barton, my personal favorite out of the original Avengers. An underrated book you wish more people would pay attention to. For this, I'm going with the Katia Rose book, which, in case you're new here, Katia Rose is one of my all-time favorite authors. And the Katia Rose book that I'm choosing for this one is Just Might Work. Just Might Work is a romance with fake dating, and it's sort of like, not enemies to lovers, but like they don't start off getting along, the two lovers. So it's queer, and it follows Dane, who is non-binary, and Evangeline. They're roommates. However, Dane's aunt is a self-proclaimed matchmaker, and she thinks that Dane and Evangeline would make the perfect couple. One day, Dane's aunt comes to them and says, I'm looking at selling the house. Here's where I'm going to sell it and when you need to find a new place by. Dane and Evangeline are like, well, since Dane's aunt was wanting us to get together, what if we fake date to convince Dane's aunt that we're actually dating? That way we can maybe convince Dane's aunt to let them stay in the house longer. So it's a fake dating scheme. It's super cute, super spicy. I love this book so much. The house that they stay in is incredible. It sounds so comfy and cozy. Dane and Evangeline are both such complex and interesting main characters, so I loved reading about both of them so much. This is just such an underrated book that I wish more people would read. Question number 5 is Hulk / Bruce Banner, a book that made you incredibly angry. A book that made me incredibly angry is actually a book that I DNF'd. It's Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I've talked a lot about how much I hate this book, but I'm going to talk about it again because I cannot stand this book. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe Pretty Girls. So it's very triggering, so if you need to skip ahead 30 seconds to like skip this summary, that is fine. Pretty Girls follows these two sisters, and one of the sisters has a husband who dies tragically, and she returns to her home and she discovers some torture porn, is the best way to word it, of girls that have been missing on her husband's computer, and it sort of unravels her life and everything she thought she knew about her husband. The reason this one angers me so much is because I feel like it needs like clear trigger warnings, and I feel like this book didn't do a good job of being like, oh yeah, this book contains non-stop descriptions of sexual assault, rape, torture, and suicide. And I was like, that's very special that this book didn't include those trigger warnings. I also feel like this book didn't like sensitively handle those triggering subjects. I felt like a lot of those triggering subjects were used just for shock effect, when I feel like things like rape and suicide and sexual assault need to be treated very like cautiously, and it needs to be talked about in a very considerate way because these are real issues that are impacting people, and I cannot stand books that use different triggering subjects as shock effects. And so this book angered me so much. I think I got 38% of the way done before I was like, this is impacting my mental health too much, I have to quit this book. Prompt number 4 is Thor, a book with a character whose strength you admired. I really admire Triss from the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. I feel like everyone knows the Divergent series, so I feel like I don't need to describe what that one is about. Triss has always been a character that's really resonated with me. I have PTSD, I experienced trauma. My trauma is obviously very different from Triss, but I experienced trauma and I reacted to it in a similar way to Triss. But what I really admire about Triss is how, despite having that trauma and clearly struggling with the effects of the trauma, she was able to be so strong and keep fighting for what she believed in. And I really admire Triss for that. And Triss will always be one of my favorite characters from any book series ever because of that. And her strength helped me get through some really, really hard times when I was first like diagnosed with PTSD and struggling with flashbacks. Prompt number 7 is the bonus one, which is Loki, a book with a twist or surprise that tricked you. I am gonna go with one that tricked me, but not for good reasons, like it was a bad trick. This one is Camp Zero by Michelle Mann Sterling. So this book has 3 points of view. There is a professor who is teaching some workers at a remote encampment in Canada. Then at that remote encampment, there's a group of sex workers, and it follows a sex worker who's working at that remote encampment and obviously working for the people who like work on building the stuff there. Then there's a third point of view, which is this group of women who are farther north in Canada, and they are in a remote area, and these women are scientists. So this book deals a lot with climate change, and it deals with these isolated groups dealing with the effects of climate change. When I tell you I was so mad when I got to the plot twist in this book, like, you root for these characters, you think that these characters are fascinating, and then the plot twist is revealed and you're like, oh, so all these characters are terrible characters that I absolutely loathe. And I feel like the first 75% of this book tricked me into thinking that this book would be decent, and then the twist happened at the last 25%, and I completely ended up not liking this book by the end of the book because of the twists that were revealed. And I wish that I could, like, tell you the twists, but I really don't want to spoil them. But also, like, if you don't like plot twists that will make you hate all of the characters, do not read Camp Zero. Like, I try so hard not to spoil things, but I also, like, feel like I need to scream about the plot twists and how awful they were in this book. So those were all the prompts for the Avengers book tag. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. As you can clearly tell, my dogs are barking. I need to go deal with them. Honestly, it sounds like there's a party going on, and my dogs are hearing the party and barking to try and get the people's attention, so that's really special. Gotta love having dogs that bark at every little thing. I upload a video at least once a week, so stick around for my next video, and until next time, goodbye!